All right, we are live. Welcome, Brad Mills. Nice to see you, man. Fresh off 21 push-ups, looking jacked.
Thank you. Yeah, getting the energy right.
I love it. Welcome back, man. You were last on here. I was checking back June 2022, and yeah, I don't really like track like the daily prices of Bitcoin and all that, but I was actually curious, like what was the price of Bitcoin back in June 22, and it was about 20K USD. Today, what are we at, like 66, 67? Nice little 3x in 3.5 years. Not that it matters too much. Like you're hearing this and be like, yeah, whatever. But like, yeah, for long time thinkers. But it's always nice to see that rise, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. It's good to think about it like that, definitely, rather
For
than
sure.
being stuck to the charts and caring about the
Yeah,
medium and short-term volatility.
for sure. For sure. So, yeah, I want to have you on here and kind of chop it up with you here. There's a lot happening right now in the markets, Bitcoin, a lot of noise, AI, OpenClaw, which I see you're very heavy in. So I want to get into all that. But before that, most people know you in the Bitcoin community as, a really positive advocate for Bitcoin. I've personally always considered you to be one of the most like sharpest and like knowledgeable thinkers in the space, which I've really admired. But you're also an entrepreneur and investor in several businesses. So I want to like talk about that a little bit. When did you start your first like real company, and what was it?
Well, thanks for all the kind words. You must not be following too many people in Bitcoin if that's the I'd suggest follow Lynn Alden or somebody like that if
No,
you want to
I
be
do,
sharp.
man. But don't. That's true. The words are true.
So my first real business actually was when I was like 8 years old.
Okay.
My mom saw that I had taken an interest in magic. I went to a yard sale and bought a magic kit, and then I wanted to do magic tricks for my ninth birthday.
Hmm.
So I know I was 8. I learned the cheesy magic tricks from the box, and then I performed at my ninth birthday. And then my mom was like, "This is something we could harness."
You got some talent
So
here.
she like created a little home business where I was doing magic shows for other kids' birthday parties. And
Wow.
that turned into like an actual income for me as a kid, like a small income, 100
Yeah.
bucks a week or something like that, which was insanely, valuable as a kid in the
Yeah.
90s.
That's crazy. Yeah.
Um, and we were like growing up. I was in poverty when I was growing up, so this was kind of like I could do whatever I want with that money, which wasn't very much, but mostly I spent it on like buying gifts for people at Christmas time and buying candy and
Hmm.
things like that, buying more
Yeah.
magic tricks, stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it was kind of like it developed that entrepreneurial spirit in me to work on the business and like practice my skills. And my mom ran it pretty much. It's basically like when you get ChatGPT, you prompt ChatGPT to write something, and then it's like, did you actually write that? It's like,
Yeah.
well,
Yeah.
I
No,
didn't really
man.
start the business,
Yeah.
but had the entrepreneurial spirit when I was younger because of that, and I did that for years. And we kind of went around, toured a bit.
Was your mom entrepreneurial or like?
Well, she was trying to make money. She was like, she did like Herbalife and network
Okay.
marketing stuff, and she never really had any success with any of it. But she was just trying,
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
and she was just supportive of trying to create any income. She was like a hustler, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
you grew up in poverty, it's like you gotta hustle to try to make things work. And this is like kind of a side hustle thing that actually involved me and my sisters. And so did that till I was like 16 or something like that. And then I got into comedy and theater and writing and making short films and stuff and um, hacky sack. So I pivoted my kind of entrepreneurial energy into selling hacky sacks. So I started importing these like hacky sacks from Pakistan, and I changed them up and fill them up with better sand and sew them up myself by hand with a signature thread pattern, and then resell them. And
Nice.
Kind of like paid my way through college doing that.
Yeah.
Wasn't killing
Brad,
it or
how
anything,
old
but
are you, by the way? I'm trying to like get some context because I remember when I was
42
42. Okay.
or 3.
Yeah, I remember. I'm 38, turning 39, but I remember at that age hacky sack. So I'm just trying to get some context for that
Yeah, it
time.
was like 1999 to
Yeah, yeah.
2002.
Okay.
Um, but then when my first, like, I guess, real business was a few years after that, when I was trying to make a film. So I graduated from that program, and I had written a screenplay, and I'm like, I got to make this movie, and nobody's going to give me some money, so I got to go on Google and type, how do I make money online? And that's literally what I did. I just went to Google and figured out what's a scam and what's not a scam by getting scammed. so so eventually, after like 20 or 30 different ideas for websites and apps and stuff, the Facebook API had just opened up. This was like 2007 or something like that, and I had this idea that I thought would be fun to try to make, and I launched it, and it got 1 million downloads in like a month.
What was
And
it?
it was just like a Canadian kind of like thing that we do here in Canada called Roll Up the Rim to Win. Tim
Okay. Yeah, yeah.
Hortons, the coffee
Of
shop,
course.
does Roll Up
Yeah.
the Rim to Win. And there was lots of Canadians on Facebook, and I was like, what if we did like a Canadian like Roll Up the Rim to Win type of game on Facebook? And being young and naive and not
Nice.
understanding trademarks and copyrights and stuff,
Yeah,
I
yeah.
made some mistakes, but we got a lot of downloads. And then Tim Hortons sent me a cease and desist, and I was like, well, how about this? How about I just come work for you and build you a Roll Up the Rim to Win app, and then we can split the profits? And this was like 2008 or 7 or whatever. And they're like, no, we're not even on Facebook. We don't know what that is. We don't care. Just stop using our trademark.
Wow.
But
Okay.
we just rebranded,
Hmm.
and the thing went for years, like 3 years, 4 years, and it was good. It was making, at one point, it was making like $100,000 a month. So
Wow. And
it
it's
was
through ads, or what was how's it monetized?
ads and in-app purchases, virtual
Yeah.
currency sales. Like we were selling
Wow.
like fake cups. It had no real world value. It was all just entertainment.
Yeah. Wow.
But people loved it. The social gaming. This was before Zynga and Playfish and all those big companies
Yeah.
came
Yeah.
in. So we were kind of
Yeah.
on the bleeding edge of social gaming and these
Perfect
like
timing.
text based games. It wasn't like really good graphics or anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that was my first kind of real business success. Was that entrepreneurial adventure into gaming. And I wasn't a coder, but I partnered with a coder, and I partnered with a graphics guy and a business guy, and I was just like, let's kind of like go all in on this, guys. We'll split the money. And then worked out. And then I tried a bunch of different stuff. Because that eventually petered out when the big guys came in and sort of started throwing $1 million ad budgets around and siphoning all the users to their
Yeah.
stuff. The small indie guys like us that were kind of like the the indie success story, right? Like the Blair Witch Project or something, where it was low budget and it succeeded. We quickly like were crowded out of that space, and I doubled down on it and tried to like scale up. I hired like 17 people, and I tried to make 200 apps, and I was trying to compete with them and go onto Facebook,
Mm.
going from Facebook to iPhone. And we had some success even doing that. We had a few million download games, a couple of games, sorry, with a couple of million downloads, but nothing paid. It didn't work out. It didn't like become profitable after it became so competitive. I couldn't crack the code, and I had some leadership struggles. Like I didn't know how to manage people. I had problems with like hiring and then letting people go and keeping them accountable to goals and setting clear
Yeah.
expectations and all this stuff that like is required to be a good entrepreneur and a good leader.
Was that your first time like hiring a team and managing people?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the
Okay.
first time I was like a student of that stuff. I was studying like the lean startup methodology and all that stuff. I was really diving into it all. Like I remember there's a lot of TED Talks at the time about managing and open management systems where people have like democratic decision making power, and as long as you're hiring star players, they're driven by this purpose of like a bigger goal, and you give them lots of autonomy. And as long as you're paying them well, it'll be good. And so I kind of built this crazy thing. We were in an abandoned women's gym. It was like 18,000 square foot
Okay.
abandoned women's gym with a
Yeah.
spa and a sauna in the basement and a hot tub. And like every employee basically had their own bathroom. And we had like a gym in there. I'd said we were all doing P90X at break and stuff. It was a great spot. It was
Nice.
like a little
Yeah.
mini Silicon Valley style setup in London, Ontario. And that lasted about a year, and then I realized I had to shut it down. And at that time, Bitcoin was like back ripping again, and I was back heavy into Bitcoin in 2013, 14. And I realized like I was actually like generating more value just myself, just by holding Bitcoin and buying Bitcoin than the whole entire company was producing trying to make 200 apps. So I was like, this seems like an efficient use of my energy to be trying to make this work when I have a lot to
Yeah.
learn and a lot of skills to develop. But so that was kind of my last big foray into entrepreneurship in trying to
Yeah.
scale up
Okay.
big, you know?
That's crazy that you realize that soon. I feel like most people kind of get that realization a lot later into Bitcoin.
What,
At
that
least
they should stop doing their
yeah, like
business?
nothing else makes sense other than like buying Bitcoin, like for your time and energy, you know?
Well, I wish I'd have learned it earlier. I mean, I burnt a lot of money. They're learning that
Well, I think
lesson.
you learned it a lot earlier than most people. That's for
I
sure.
mean, I'm still learning today, right? Like
Yeah.
I learn lessons all the time of how to not waste money and making bad decisions.
Yeah.
Just last year with the treasury company fiasco, like I kind of went too heavy into all those treasury startups. Now I learned the lesson as a founder, but then now as an investor, I
Yeah.
have to learn it again.
I want to get into that too. So that you shut that down was like 2000, what, like
That was like 2014,
oh,
15, something
okay.
like that.
So that was going for like a couple years.
Yeah, it was like
Yeah.
2-3 years.
Okay. So when did you get into Bitcoin? Like when did you discover Bitcoin?
Well, I was into Bitcoin during that period when I first started that game, and then we were bootstrapping it. There was just us in our basement where we had no overhead, and was crushing it. And the summer of 2011, I found out about Bitcoin, and I got totally distracted by Bitcoin, and I kind of let my business fall to the wayside because I just got obsessed with Bitcoin and I started mining it. And actually, the kind of like energy I have right now with this OpenClaw thing is the energy I had with Bitcoin in 2011. I'm just
Interesting.
totally obsessed with it, and I'm trying to figure it all out. It's this new exciting technology. I'm
Hmm.
like on day 9 of it, and I'm like having trouble keeping my other healthy routines going because all I'm
It's
thinking of is like,
obsessed.
how do I improve this thing? How do I learn
Yeah.
more? It's so exciting. But the same thing with Bitcoin mining in the early days, 2011, it was just like so new and so bleeding edge that I just kept running into all these edge cases and everything kept breaking on me. And eventually I gave up on it in terms of mining because I was like, after a couple months of trying to do that, I'm like, this is not easy for me to do. And I'm not a technical
Mhm.
person. Like, I'm just going to
Yeah.
buy and hold the Bitcoin from now on. I'm not going to try to mine it. Or if I do, I'm going to partner with somebody. So then in 2015, when I shut the game company down, um, so in between that, like Bitcoin, when I got into it, it was $10, and then it pumped all the way up to $30 that summer. And I'm like, I was a genius, I was right. And then I sold half my Bitcoin thinking that
Hmm.
was so smart. And then it crashed to $2 the next year. And I had like started these basically like Bitcoin startup ideas where one of them was you could get paid in Bitcoin for doing like AngelList style tasks. So
Yeah.
just what will you do for Bitcoin? Will you mow someone's lawn? Will you make a graphic? Well, whatever it is, right? So you get paid in Bitcoin for doing micro tasks. And like the other one was doing affiliate offers. You could get paid in Bitcoin for like signing up for Columbia House and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the volatility in the price of Bitcoin going from 30 to 2, I was pricing things in Bitcoin, not dollars. So like I was owing people more Bitcoin as the price was lowering. And it just didn't make any sense. So I
Yeah.
shut down all my Bitcoin businesses in 2012. And I was like, I'm just going to hold the Bitcoin, right? Like I'm not going to mine it. I'm not going to try to do a
Yeah.
Bitcoin business. I'm just going to hold the Bitcoin. Then eventually, like, I had sold too many of them, and it was not worth anything anymore at $2. It was like nothing anymore. I was like, oh well, if it's going to be something, it's going to be at least $1,000. So maybe when it gets back to $1,000, I'll pay attention again.
Yeah.
And then in 2014, like early 2014, end of 2013, when it went up to like $1,000, and I was like shutting my game company down because the Bitcoin was back, I started getting back into it. I started making games that like used Bitcoin, and I started another mining company with a friend this time. I was like, okay, you're going to be the technical guy. You're going to take care of the power contracts and the mining, keeping them up and stuff. I'll just be resources, and I'll be my Bitcoin network because I've been in it a few years now, and idea guy. So that's kind of where I was in like 2015. Still serial entrepreneur, still trying to make things work. But we had another issue with the Bitcoin mine that kind of, again, we blew up, and that thing ended through a partnership that failed, and one of the guys just disappearing with half the money. And,
Oh, wow.
it was just like a massive mess. And another lesson for me to just, buy and hold Bitcoin is probably the safest way to get exposure to Bitcoin.
Crazy. Wow. So, and so since then, you've just been, buying and holding Bitcoin and like just leveraging those assets into investing now,
Not
or?
really. Like Bitcoin then crashed from 1,000, 1,100 or something all the way down to like 200 or whatever it was, 400 in 2015, 16. And it wasn't until 2017 that it went up again. So in that time frame, I tried some more stuff. I launched like a coffee company on Amazon, and I tried to learn how to do fulfilled by Amazon stuff, and went to some, I was just trying to learn and pivot and figure out where the next thing was that I could generate an income. And still doing gaming here and there a little bit, but mostly I was a little burnt out by my leadership lack of skills. So I was like, I don't want to do this again because I still haven't learned my lessons properly. I got to get better as a leader before I try to ramp something like that up. And, the coffee stuff, it all pretty much fizzled away. The fulfilled by Amazon stuff failed. Like, I'm sure listeners can relate with the kind of trendy thing of the moment that you
Shiny
get drawn
object
into.
syndrome.
Yeah, you buy a course from some guy that's making tons of money, and then you try it out, and maybe you're a little successful. Maybe somebody in your mastermind is successful, but you can never quite get it. But this whole time, I'm like learning about the history of money and Austrian economics and previous cycles of financial instability and like the depression and the Warren Buffett and the Rockefellers, and learning about all these greats in history, and plus just learning about other financial bubbles that have happened and how the great traders operated, how to manage risk, how to manage a portfolio, so that when the wealth came to me again, I would not fumble it and I would have lessons learned. So I kind of read the book Money Master the Game by Tony Robbins in maybe 2016, 17. And it was a great book with a lot of good exercises on dreaming big and then figuring out your budget. Like, how much money are you going to actually need to live the life you want to live? You probably don't need as much as you think, because you can have the lifestyle of a millionaire by renting a nice Airbnb for one weekend of the year and, stuff, rather than owning an entire Airbnb.
Yeah.
So I kind of got into that mindset of like, okay, well, I'm just going to plan and think big. And then I'll have a blueprint and a path to get there. So 2017, 2018, 2019 was kind of like, again, just trying different things. Worked for a crypto fund where I was got a front row seat to the ICO bubble and was on the investment committee there. And we were me and another partner were doing an algorithmic trading strategy, because I had learned a lot about trading and algorithmic trading. And he was the kind of coder of it all, and I was the sales guy, and kind of not really too much on the strategy side of things, although I was trading myself and was not doing too bad. But in that time frame, Bitcoin went up like 700%, that I was doing all that work. And I was like, again, like, I should have just freaking did nothing and held Bitcoin. Like, all the money I put into this stuff, I should have just bought Bitcoin with it and just held more Bitcoin, because our trading thing did like 500% in a year. And in any other industry, like, that's insanity. We got so lucky. Like, it was trading during the Trump election, And it took this massive win that netted us like a 370% gain. The first Trump election in 2016, right? And we got this insane gain, but like when we compared it to Bitcoin's gains, it wasn't even keeping up. so, so we're like, what is the point of taking all this risk and all these sleepless nights and, worrying about losing people's money? Because we were managing money for other people. I'm like worrying about that and feeling those like things about like, oh, I'm gonna lose people's money. I don't
Yeah.
like that. Like
Yeah.
I have no control over this
Yeah.
market, and like I know they're aware of the risks, but I still feel bad by when we have down days. So I just decided like I don't want to do this anymore. I'm just going to tell everybody to buy and hold Bitcoin, and then just avoid taking the risk and myself. So,
Yeah.
I just keep dipping my toes into entrepreneurship, and then coming back to like I should just buy more Bitcoin and hold it and stop putting my money
That's
into other
hilarious.
stuff.
Wow. Okay. So you've been dabbling in kind of everything for a really long time.
Yeah,
Um,
serial entrepreneur, I'd say, is
yeah.
definitely accurate. In 2019, or let's say 2020 or so, is when I more so shifted to become an angel investor, and to satisfy that activity bias and that need for like trying new businesses and all that stuff. Rather than doing it myself, I started trying to just find people who were younger and had the energy and had better leadership skills and better
Yeah.
technical chops, and just try to find good people I could invest in, and then just be part of their story, and then see if I could help them out.
I want to talk about that. So, uh, excuse the question. I don't know like how much you share, but like I'm just trying to understand the mechanics of your like investing. Like, do you invest in Bitcoin? Do you like liquidate to invest, or like?
So I'll invest in not, I don't invest in non Bitcoin startups. So I only invest in Bitcoin startups.
Okay.
And I have like a holding company that I invest through the holding company. And then if I need to invest fiat, I will take a loan against my Bitcoin because I don't want to sell any Bitcoin anymore.
Yeah.
And now we're in this phase where um, there's a lot of good options. There's a couple of the startups that I've invested in, actually. Like one of them's Debify, and they're based in Switzerland, and they're like a no counterparty risk option to borrow against your Bitcoin. So you can, if it's worth it, like you can avoid cap gains taxes by borrowing against your Bitcoin to upgrade your lifestyle or to invest in something that's a good opportunity. As long as the growth is more than the interest rate, you're good, right? It's the traditional strategy of how the wealthy have done it for centuries now, of not selling their valuable real estate
Yeah.
portfolios, but borrowing
Exactly.
against it and doing the self-fulfilling trust stuff and all that. Well, now that's available with Bitcoin, and you can do it in a way that there's no risk to you, unless the only risk to you is what you've agreed to, which is if the Bitcoin value of the loan drops below X amount. Let's say you got $1 million of Bitcoin and you're taking a $500,000 loan. Well, the terms are going to be kind of like, if the value of the Bitcoin drops to $700,000, then you have to top up to get it back in good standing. And if it goes below 700,000, you're going to start being margin called or
Margin call.
liquidated on the
Yeah.
loan.
Yeah.
They're going to close your loan out. You're going to get some Bitcoin back, but all the interest and any fees or whatever are going to be sent to the lender and the platform, and then you'll be left with less Bitcoin. So because Bitcoin is very volatile, you don't want to be taking those types of loans. Really, you kind of should be prepared for extreme volatility in Bitcoin. So if you're going to be borrowing against your Bitcoin, you got to be very conservative with your LTV rate, your loan to value rate. I don't think people should be taking more than like a 10% LTV rate to Bitcoin.
That's what I was gonna say. Like 5 to 10%. Yeah.
Yeah, like
I agree.
then you don't have to worry too much. Like if you're taking 30, 40, 50% LTV rate when there's a
Risky.
50% drop in Bitcoin like we just
Yeah.
saw, that's stressful. That's
Yeah.
you could lose your Bitcoin that way.
Yeah.
So if you take like at 5-10% LTV, like you can weather a bear market and be just fine. And then in the end you come out of it where you didn't sell your Bitcoin and you're able to survive the winter and you're back and it's growing more than the interest rate. And then you can
Yeah.
do that whole annuity thing where then when your loan expires, you just re-up with a bigger loan, pay off the interest of the old loan with the new one, and then just keep going paying for your lifestyle or your investments or whatever it is you're using your Bitcoin for.
Yeah. So I'm on your website right now with your portfolio companies. So these are all companies you're invested in?
These, yeah, but this is old. I haven't updated this in like a year. So some of these
Okay.
companies don't exist anymore, and
Got it.
there's some new ones that aren't on there. I should
Okay,
probably
okay.
update that.
Yeah. No, no, I was
I'll got to
so
get my OpenClaw bot on
yeah,
this.
I was gonna say, man, your OpenClaw, he's sleeping right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so um, you mentioned Debify. Was that the one where you can take loans out against your
Yeah,
Bitcoin?
there's Debify, and then there's a company called Lava, which is a custodial option. So if people are comfortable with the risks of a custodian, which there's Arch Lending is another one. I'm not invested in Arch Lending. There's Ledin, which is another one that has been around a long time. Um, Friends with the founder Maurizio. Um, so there's multiple options now where you can take a loan against your Bitcoin, but it's up to you, like how much counterparty risk you want to take. If you want no counterparty risk, well, then you gotta be careful about the platform you use. If you're willing to take some counterparty risk, then there's platforms like Ledin and Lava and stuff like that.
What's the typical interest rate right now?
Well, if you take in the counterparty risk, you can get a lower interest rate. If you're in the States, there's other options too, like Jack Maller's company, I think does loans now, Strike.
Yeah.
And I think the interest rate's not too bad. If you're looking for a loan, 8 to 9% is what you'd want to look for a non-custodial, like a Debify type of interest, and 5 to 6% if you can get that. If you're willing to take some counterparty risk, that's a good rate to try to go for. And I expect that as this matures, we're going to see them come down to the same type of rate you can get with a mortgage on a house, just like the
Yeah.
prime rate.
Do you see more traditional banks offering these um, mechanisms?
I think it's inevitable, man. I think it's like on the wall there. The big banks are getting involved. Andrew Fitzgerald in the States is very actively trying to capture business. All the big institutions like BlackRock and Vanguard are, bending the knee. And Fidelity's been into Bitcoin since like 2013. So there's lots of movement there. I think it's only a matter of time before we see the financial system merge with the Bitcoin system. And then it makes sense to even have a hybrid loan, like a Bitcoin plus real estate loan, which gets you maybe even a better rate than you can get it for just a mortgage.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because if you have both forms of collateral on a loan, it's even less risky.
Yeah. You're in Canada, right? You're in on the East Coast. Like as a Bitcoiner, right, who's heavily invested in Bitcoin, how do you see like Canada? How do you see do you see yourself in Canada forever?
I'm not really thinking about it too much. I'm kind of just focused on developing optionality so that if the thing that I'm afraid of happens, that I can just deal with it and not have to
Yeah,
stress about it.
fair
I
enough.
used to stress about it more, but that just caused friction in my relationship with my wife because she's got roots here and she doesn't want to leave and she doesn't want to be stressed out about thinking about all that stuff. So I just decided to focus on other things and then stop worrying about unrealized capital gains taxes and communism and violence and all that shit nonsense that's
Yeah,
happening here,
I
and
guess
stop
that's
looking at it.
yeah, and I guess that's one of the big benefits of Bitcoin, right? The portability part of it, right? As opposed to
Yeah,
gold or real estate.
yeah,
Um,
totally. It's it's definitely like the sovereign individual thesis kind of playing out. If
yeah,
anybody's not familiar with that book, it's a great read. Or even just like go ask ChatGPT to tell you a summary of it, or get Notebook LM to write you a podcast real quick about what is the individual, or what is the summary of the sovereign individual. But the basic idea is these guys in the 90s wrote and predicting the rise of the internet and digital currencies, and how encrypted communication and encrypted money would make it so that most commerce would live actually outside of borders and on the internet and on networks, and where there's corporations and individuals that most of their economic activity happens outside of borders, then governments will lose the ability to control their citizens through taxation, and taxation will just become voluntary. And at that point, the whole control mechanism will break down, and their ability to print money will break down, and individuals will make choices for themselves based on like how well they're treated in their jurisdiction rather than being forced to stay. And so like that's sort of happening now. It's been happening for a long time. There's lots of competition for wealthy people to leave places like California and go to places like Texas. We've been seeing that since COVID.
And more so now with this new taxes, California. You mentioned California, but I think what $500 billion of wealth has left that state. I think in the last few months or something, which is pretty wild.
Bitcoin's great for folks that want to be protected against class warfare.
Yeah. Do you see any risks though, in the sense of, I guess an example would be like Executive Order 6102 in the US, where they confiscated gold.
Not really. No, not really. I mean, that's kind of like a meme in Bitcoin. People say that a lot. But the more I learned about the Depression and the FDR years and the gold standard and what was before the gold standard and what came after the gold standard and all the things that kind of go into that time, the more I realized that that's not really a problem. Like the reason why Executive Order 6102 happened was because of gold clause contracts, where all the bonds that the United States was issuing were redeemable in either dollars or gold. And FDR had to, what he felt he had to do was to print their way out of the Depression. And he couldn't print his way out of the Depression if the gold clause contracts existed, because then people would want to redeem their bonds for gold, because as he increased the supply of fiat money to create economic stimulus during the Depression, it would make the gold be worth more. And so people would want to redeem their contracts in gold, not dollars. So he had to do both at once. He had to suspend gold clause contracts and gold redeemability for bonds and contracts in America, so that he could then issue lots of dollars, and people wouldn't take their dollar bills to the bank and say, okay, give me gold, because he didn't want to drain the coffers. And at the same time, so then he had to do Executive Order 6102, suspending gold as something that Americans could own. But I did a podcast interview with Dr. Edwin Vieira like 3 years ago. He wrote this like 800-page tome on the history of gold and silver as money in the United States, like from the constitutional perspective. And I asked him that question, and he told me that only about 50% of Americans complied with Executive Order 6102. And most of the people that complied were the ones that had their gold in vaults in the bank, because there was no option to not comply. If the gold was in the vault in the bank, it was just like no option. They just took it and gave you some worthless dollars. But people that had the gold at home, they didn't turn it in. They just ignored it. It's the same situation as with BitTorrent, right? Like we grew up in an era of Napster and BitTorrent, and then they made piracy illegal, but nobody stopped pirating, even if they got a letter from their cable company or whatever. It was like, no, I'm just going to download movies because it's the better option. They can't enforce these rules if everybody's doing it. So they do it to try to control behavior, but it's not actually effective. Like what they have to do is compete.
Yeah, no, I agree, but the difference with Bitcoin, I think, is so most people who buy Bitcoin, they're buying it through exchanges, whether they're custodial or non-custodial. But most of these are KYC, And so, if the government wanted to, they know exactly who bought Bitcoin and how much they have.
Yeah, but the problem is like the same when it was in the 1920s with gold. If you have your gold in a vault at a bank, then there's really no option you have. Your gold's going to get confiscated and you're going to be given dollars at the pegged rate of $20 an ounce. And then the day after, it's going to go up to $30 an ounce because that's when the government marks it back up because they printed 30% more money supply and then they peg it to 30. And, a decade later, it's at 200 an ounce and you're still sitting on your $20 being like, shit, I got ripped off. So the people that didn't comply and they had their gold in self-custody under a mattress or whatever, they just weathered the stupid rule of the government and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
eventually gained a lot of value. So yeah, it's two parts to that. It's an argument for self-custody. Like you should always be self-custodying as much Bitcoin as you're comfortable with, that you don't want to have at risk of seizure or surveillance. The other thing is, though, the Executive Order 6102 happened because the United States was on a gold standard. So Bitcoin has to become like the asset that backs the dollar in order for it to become valuable and worthwhile enough for a government to want to prevent citizens from cashing in their bonds and their dollar bills for Bitcoin. So it wasn't just like, oh, well, yeah, we don't want Americans to own gold anymore. Let's do Executive Order 6102 and ban them from owning gold. There was a real structural reason why they had to do that in order to try to rescue the country from the depression. And if we get to a point where there's a Bitcoin reserve that's backing the dollar and it's, trillions of dollars of Bitcoin backing the dollar, then I'd be a little more worried about a 6102 attack because they'd have a real incentive if they're going to be printing money that they don't want people redeeming their dollars for Bitcoin. So I just don't think it's a realistic thing that we should be worried about anymore. I used to be worried about it, not anymore. And actually, if we get to a point where they're going to 6102 Bitcoin, like Bitcoin's going to be like $10 million a coin. So just make sure you have some in self
Yeah.
custody.
No. Like, play a hypothetical. Like, why would a government do this? What about in a case of, debt is just out of control, it's spiraling, and you have a population of people that owns like this really valuable asset that is Bitcoin, and you just want to confiscate it to pay down your debt as a government.
I mean, that's different. That's capital controls. That's wealth seizure. Like I'd put that in the bucket of capital controls, and that's common all over the world. In China, it's pretty common. In Greece, we saw with the
Happening
bail-ins,
in
and
California right now, or it's about to
yeah, and
happen.
what's that country that just did the unrealized cap gains tax?
Netherlands.
Netherlands. So
Yeah.
that's a different scenario. That's like governments just trying to control wealthy people from leaving and trap them inside of their tax relationship.
But is that not a risk to you? You don't
That's
see
a
that
risk
as
to
a.
everything. Like it's a risk to anybody that owns assets for sure.
That's true.
But
Yeah.
Bitcoin is the one that, you can actually take it into your own custody. And, if
Yeah.
you're doing it properly, like how are they going to know? Like it's the most portable version of optionality that anybody can own. Like you can have your wealth stored in a home and then they can declare unrealized capital gains taxes and there's nothing you can do. It's part of the legal system. You can't just pick your house up and leave. But if you have your wealth stored in a portable asset that's censorship resistant and pseudonymous and there's no physical trace of it, then you can just store it in your brain and leave. Like, what are they going to do?
Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. It's the only way to enforce it. If you literally have someone knock on your door with like an AK-47 and trying to, you know, find your stuff. I
Yeah,
don't know.
and it's like the hardest to enforce too, because as the government is growing so big and they start putting these rules in place, they get less and less effective and efficient. And if more and more people are leaving because of this, they're going to have like so much of there's such a big problem to deal with that it'll be less likely that your small Bitcoin wallet's going to be in this net. You know, they're probably going to be looking at like the top 1% mostly if
Yeah.
everybody's leaving, right?
Yeah.
Um, but you never know. I mean, it's always a risk of being in a country that's
Yeah.
collapsing, is that you're going
Yeah.
to be
No,
a target.
good perspective. I like how you're thinking about that. It makes a lot of sense. Uh, you're hearing now a lot of the news, more so from people who are like, they're into Bitcoin, but like are not like fully understand it. Things like the Epstein and like the linkage with like Epstein and the origins of Bitcoin. What do you say to people like that?
Mostly I just laugh at them. Um, it's like the people that send me those messages are like the same people that think realtors cause inflation. So I don't really engage with it that much.
Fair enough.
Like, oh, you think that because food costs so much, you're gonna go blame the grocery store. Like, it's the same type of people that think the capitalism is the problem. You know, it's just like clearly not a good way of being able to look at things. And I think a lot of people that are, oh my God, Epstein controlled Bitcoin and he was involved in Bitcoin. They're kind of like people that don't have enough Bitcoin and they're using it as a way to like rationalize why they don't have enough Bitcoin and why they miss Bitcoin. Because like, oh, I knew that's why I wasn't in it, because I could tell it was like Epstein coin.
Yeah.
So there's so many so many ridiculous things I see. But to give a real answer, like, it doesn't even matter if Epstein had created Bitcoin. It doesn't even matter. Like, you got to study what Bitcoin is. The CIA created the internet. You know, Epstein breathed oxygen. Does that mean that you're going to stop breathing oxygen?
Yeah.
You're going to start
It's
breathing
true.
carbon
It's totally
dioxide
irrelevant.
instead?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. It's
Like,
totally irrelevant.
people don't think that they don't understand that Bitcoin is decentralized and that there's no back doors in Bitcoin. Like, it doesn't matter who created it. It's for your enemies. Like, all the governments of the world use it, even if the Chinese government created it or the CIA created it. It's like, thank you very much for this censorship resistant technology that allows me to have financial sovereignty and rules that nobody can change, and then I can have protection against inflation. Thanks,
Yeah.
thanks a
It's so
lot.
true. And I feel these things always come out during, downturns, right? And like you're an OG, you've seen how many downturns now, and there's always a lot of noise. And right now too, right? We're down again. I don't really track this stuff. I just looked before we came on here. So down about 32% in the last 12 months. But again, if you've been in it long enough, there've been many bear markets, downturns. So it's always fun to sit back and hear all these experts bash Bitcoin, only to see it roar
Yeah, and
back up again.
it's the same people that have been saying since like Bitcoin was $100. Oh,
Yeah,
Bitcoin's going to boil the oceans. I'm glad it crashed to 100
yeah. The
bucks. And
Peter
then
Schiffs of the world. He's the best.
three three years later, they're back and they're like, "Oh, Bitcoin just crashed to
Yeah,
$900. A good thing, anyways, because China's going to ban it and China controls it." And then 2 years later, it's at like $10,000. Like, "Oh, good thing Bitcoin crashed from 20,000 to 10,000 because China just banned Bitcoin mining because the CIA created it." And it's just like all these nonsense FUD things. Next headline you're going to see is like, oh, Bitcoin crashed to $500,000 because of the first AGI is trying to use quantum
yeah,
computers to mine Satoshi's coins and unlock 1 million Bitcoin through AGI quantum mechanics. And then these people are going to be like, told you so. It's only 500,000 a coin now when it used to be 1 million. Like,
yeah. I
okay,
know.
but you said it was Epstein coin at 60,000 and now it's 500,000. It's crashing from 1 million. They never learn.
Yeah, I know. So, but with this downturn right now, curious to hear from you. Like, does it feel a little different in the sense that the only difference now, like, there's a lot of big money behind it with governments, companies, funds, like invested into Bitcoin, which makes I don't know if it's just the headlines a bit more heightened, but are you evaluating this particular downturn differently than others, or same old, same old?
Well, I'm I'm surprised both at the rapidity of the upturn and the steepness of the downturn. I didn't think that we are going to go into a bull market when we did so early. I didn't think that the ETFs were going to get approved and that BlackRock was going to start shilling Bitcoin. So there was quite a few surprises for me this cycle. I wasn't ready for the upswing and I wasn't ready for this deep of a downswing. But I mean, I was prepared for it because I like to think worst case scenario and not take too much risk. So I was prepared for it, and I was mentally thinking that, like, if Bitcoin performs as it should with all these new buyers coming into the market and the maturing profile of sovereign appetite for Bitcoin compared to like just rich person and retail appetite for Bitcoin, when you have countries and sovereign wealth funds FOMOing into Bitcoin and, you know, buying the dip and accumulating every day like a Wall Street trader would in 2017 or like a retail participator would during COVID, you're going to have like a lot more demand for Bitcoin. And then you have the corporate adoption, like Michael Saylor, who's just this buyer of first resort. All he does is buy Bitcoin, and he's out there like a machine raising money and buying Bitcoin constantly. Well, I figured that if we did have a cyclical downturn in Bitcoin like we did in the past, like the four other ones I lived through, that it would be a lot less volatile, but it would still be volatile. So all that to say is, like, I factored in my mental models that we could drop 50% and we'd still be in a gold rush, like a 10-year gold rush for Bitcoin. That doesn't mean that Bitcoin's dead or Bitcoin is not being adopted. Like, I accounted for a 50% drop in this band of like ever upward rising Bitcoin adoption that kind of parallels the S&P 500 or NASDAQ or one of the other major indexes, but with like maybe 2 times the volatility. Because when you go back and you look at like the dot-com bubble collapse and the 2008 collapse, like how terrible and volatile those things were. When you look at them on a chart, they weren't that deep of a drop. It was like 25%, 30% from the top to the bottom.
Yeah.
Individual stocks got completely wrecked and banks went under, and there's lots of risk there. Futures traders went negative, you know, got wrecked, and when oil went negative, and there's lots of volatility in commodities and stuff during COVID. But when you look at it as like an index, then I was thinking like, okay, it could probably be still like twice as volatile as an index, like a major index fund, if Bitcoin trades like a reserve asset that's like being hoovered up. And that's exactly where we are right now. Like we're basically on the bottom of what I thought we could get if this theory I have is true, that like we're in a 10-year cycle of like Bitcoin going to $20 million a coin. I'm still operating like that's where we are. So I'm not selling or anything. I'm buying more. And I could be wrong. Like we could have another deep drawdown like we did last time, maybe go down another 50% from here. And we could be
Yeah.
at $30,000 a coin in a month. And I could be like, oh, I was wrong. So don't take my financial advice. Just think about it like you got to study Bitcoin and understand what it is and set yourself a target for how much you want to have of it. And then just don't worry about the price unless you're a trader. If you're really good and you're going to be professional about it, and you're not going to make emotional decisions, you're going to follow your risk profile and execute your rules without emotion, then, you know, treat it like a real profession, like a job, then you should do what you want, like trade the Bitcoin, take out the options, hedge it, whatever. But if you're just trying to buy and hold and protect yourself from inflation and wealth debasement, then really you should look at it like just a capital allocator, just a saver over 10-year time frame, and look at these dips as opportunities to buy another ticket on the
Yeah.
lifeboat for someone in your family.
That's what I was gonna say. Like this stuff becomes so like irrelevant and pointless if your outlook is long term, forever. Like, you know, it's like investing becomes the easiest thing in the world if your outlook is long enough. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like you don't even pay attention to this stuff.
Totally.
You mentioned quantum. I know you kind of made a joke out of it. For me personally, if you look at like any risk, right, worst case scenario, don't you think that one is the biggest risk to Bitcoin?
I don't. I'm pretty confident that Bitcoin will fix itself, and And what I mean is that like the rational actors that own Bitcoin will make the right choice for the Bitcoin value and for their own Bitcoin value. And so, there's already like quantum resistant algorithms and stuff that we can migrate to. And as Bitcoin becomes more of a risk of being disrupted by a quantum rogue AI or something like that, or a rogue nation with quantum, and what they want to do is steal Bitcoin instead of like controlling the nukes or whatever. Like, I
Yeah.
think we've figured out, like honestly, I think it'll be a voluntary soft fork that rational people will choose to adopt a version of Bitcoin that's not at risk of being
Yeah.
stolen. And
I,
there
I
will
think
be some.
something came out like a couple days ago. I don't know if you probably heard about this, like this soft fork for quantum proofing. Did you see this?
Yeah, that's been rolling around for a few months now.
Okay.
Yeah, there's been talks about the quantum soft fork of Bitcoin for about a year now, and there's quite a few developers thinking about this. And then like Michael Saylor from MicroStrategy, who owns 700,000 Bitcoin or controls 700,000 Bitcoin for all their shareholders, they just announced on their last earnings call that they're starting like a quantum research task force, and they'll be sponsoring like developers to get together and kind of review proposals and figure out the best way to safely upgrade Bitcoin. And honestly, the way I think about it is like I kind of think about it in a strange way, where I look at it more like an opportunity that I think Satoshi realized that this was possible when he created Bitcoin, or when he or she or they created Bitcoin. And at the time, there was choices that Satoshi made, like certain algorithms to use, that it was like in Satoshi's awareness that quantum was a risk, but it was like decades away.
Hmm.
And the same thing with Schnorr signatures, which is a type of sort of algorithm or whatever that Bitcoin recently added, but it wasn't able to be used when Satoshi created Bitcoin because there was like trademark risk.
Okay.
So the way that Satoshi released Bitcoin, it was almost like all these clues that Satoshi put in his posts, and the birthday that was chosen for the forum. It was like the day that Executive Order 6102 happened, and the year that the gold ban lifted. Um, so there's all these like Easter eggs, like even the word Bitcoin, like back in the 1800s or the 1700s, I forget what it was, when the United States was actually the colonies. It wasn't the United States yet. The Spanish milled dollar was the official money of the colonies, and it was a silver coin, and it was a coin, and like it had slices in it, and it was 8 pieces, and each piece was called a bit. So
Hmm.
that's where the phrase 2-bit idiot or 2-bit criminal or whatever comes from,
Oh,
because it was like
I
a
didn't
two
know that.
pieces of a coin.
Hmm.
So the word Bitcoin has monetary provenance, and there's 8 decimal points in a Bitcoin, just like there's 8 little pieces of a bit of a Spanish milled dollar coin. So I feel like there's all these little Easter eggs hidden in Bitcoin, and Satoshi, I feel like, made the choice that there there's all this mining that happened in the early days of Bitcoin that bootstrapped the network. 10 million coins or something like that got mined before anybody knew what Bitcoin really was. I mean, we knew, like some of us knew, but a lot of the world didn't know. And in the early years, especially the first 2 or 3 years, millions of Bitcoin that got mined, well, people didn't have any real idea what the value of it was. Some of it was trading for nothing. Some of it was like a penny a coin. So people lost their hard drives, they lost their keys, they sold it for too early, they didn't know what they had. And Bitcoin was bootstrapped in this irresponsible way where people were mining Bitcoin without even realizing what they were holding. And so you got like 2 million coins that are lost and that are vulnerable to quantum attack, quantum theft. And
Hmm.
I actually think that that's a feature, not a bug, So now we're in this world where Bitcoin has been bootstrapped as this real asset that underpins even certain countries like El Salvador and Bhutan, the happiest place on earth. Like they geo-mine Bitcoin and hold it for their country's reserves. So Bitcoin is really becoming this serious thing. There's like a huge industry behind Bitcoin custody and Bitcoin. And Lloyd's of London is insuring Bitcoin. Individuals that hold Bitcoin now through Miniscript wallets, and one of the companies I'm invested in, AnchorWatch, has a Lloyd's of London coverage policy that allows like pretty much any amount of Bitcoin to be insured if they're storing it properly. So like Lloyd's of London's not going to be insuring Bitcoin that could be stolen through quantum cryptography. And I feel like the Bitcoin that is at risk is lost Bitcoin. And I feel like Satoshi actually baked in a second Bitcoin mining gold rush, and it's a quantum treasure hunt where the people that figure out how to steal that Bitcoin are going to know what it is. And it's like, all those lost coins there's never going to be more than 21 million coins. Even if quantum cryptography gets figured out and there's a rogue actor out there stealing Bitcoin, it's all these coins that are lost that they're going to be going after.
What's the difference between stealing a lost coin versus someone's coin that they're...
So in the early days of Bitcoin, there was a different type. It was a weaker way to store the Bitcoin. It was kind of like more susceptible to quantum theft, if you want to call it that. And I don't know the exact technical details behind this. I just know that that's the case. Satoshi's 1 million coins that he mined while he was bootstrapping the network, and the other miners around that time that kind of lost their keys. The story of the guy that lost his Bitcoin in the landfill on his hard drive, and he spent millions of dollars to try to recover it, and he couldn't find it. Like those are the Bitcoins, Satoshi's coins, his coins, those people that were like super early to Bitcoin and they weren't using multi-sig, and they were using like less secure ways to store their Bitcoin. Like they were reusing addresses, stuff like that. Those coins are susceptible to being stolen through quantum harvesting or whatever, treasure hunting. And I feel like it's the same analogy as like the Spanish galleons that used to be going across the ocean and with thousands of ounces of gold on them that got sank by another rival naval battle or whatever. Now they're sitting at the bottom of the ocean, and it's, if somebody goes and figures out like how to get that gold, that doesn't mean gold is worthless. It just means that, well, congratulations, you got a payday because you did a treasure hunt and you found some gold.
Yeah.
So I actually think about it like I
sense.
think it is going to happen, and we should expect it to happen, that somebody eventually is going to recover Satoshi's Bitcoin, and there's going to be over 1 million Bitcoin that come back onto the market. And I actually think that the volatility that might come from that is going to be a blessing, because it could cause, like, you will see all these FUD headlines again, like Bitcoin is hacked and Bitcoin is broken and Satoshi's back and all this shit. And people will just dump Bitcoin. And I'm just going to be sitting there waiting, just, oh my God, please give me some cheap Bitcoin. Because whatever volatility happens because of that is, the way I'm mentally prepared for it, is a gift. So if that happens and we get a flash crash, imagine you could buy Bitcoin for 10,000 again. Like, dude, like hook me up. Like I'd be like liquidating whatever I could to be buying Bitcoin at 10K.
Yeah, for real. Yeah. Okay. No, that
because it
makes
doesn't
sense.
fundamentally, it doesn't change the properties of Bitcoin. Like quantum's not going to break Bitcoin as like there's only 21 million. The difficulty adjustment's not going to change. It doesn't break Bitcoin mining. SHA-256 hashing's not up for grabs here. It's literally just the people that have insecure Bitcoin wallets. Those wallets can be stolen through somebody that figures out how to do it with quantum.
Makes sense. All right. Yeah. I want to talk about your like you invest in dozens, I guess, of Bitcoin companies. Anything exciting right now with any of your portfolio companies or other, like, that are playing in this
There's so
Bitcoin
much.
space?
That's one of the reasons why I'm messing around with OpenClaw right now, because I need help. I can't maintain it all. I can't keep up with it all. There's so much going on. There's so many updates I'm getting. Like one of the companies that I invested in was doing like a privacy focused Bitcoin wallet. And then that didn't work out for them, so they pivoted to private AI compute. And so like that's pretty exciting because now they're really relevant. They're basically one of the main private APIs that you can hook up your chatbot to or your agent to, and then be able to have it process your data privately, or have conversations with like a ChatGPT model that's not gonna know it's you, and that all the data is anonymous and encrypted and run on device in some cases.
What's
So
that company called?
that's called try Maple.ai, I think is their website.
Okay.
But if you just search like try Maple on Twitter, you'll find them. They got an app on iPhone too. But yeah, like I said, AnchorWatch is another cool one. It allows you to have like institutional grade, like multi-sig, and have insurance on your Bitcoin. Like that's pretty big for a lot of the older generation, and corporations and
Yeah.
family
What do you think
offices
will
and
be
stuff.
the first like big like mainstream Bitcoin company or industry that just like blows up?
Well, I'm pretty excited by what Square and Cash App are doing. Like they've been integrating with Bitcoin for years now, and they just recently rolled out Bitcoin as a payment option in all the Square terminals in the States.
Saw that. Yeah.
So that's pretty exciting. Now we're getting like, this is like back to like 2013 days, where it's exciting that you can go out and orange pill your local vendor, your local cafe or whatever, and be like, hey, can I pay with Bitcoin? And they're like, oh, I don't know how to do that. And I'm like, well, do you have a Square terminal? Yeah. Like, here, just I can pay you with Bitcoin then.
Yeah.
And then, the way they set it up was you can accept Bitcoin and it gets automatically switched over to dollars. But if you want to orange pill the cafe owner, you can say, hey, you can click a button inside of your settings that says keep half it as Bitcoin, or keep whatever percent you want as Bitcoin, and you can start saving Bitcoin. It goes up 30% a year on average. You might want to have some just in case it takes off. So it's like bringing back that energy. The other thing is Lightning Network and Cashew and like eCash and all these like scalable internet native, AI native Bitcoin payment methods. Like AIs are choosing Bitcoin, and we're going into a world where AI is like a part of everybody's life. You're going to have AIs that you already have, like my AI agent, OpenClaw agent. The first thing it did was figured out, like I told it to go post on Nostr and see if like I could send it some Bitcoin. I was like, hey, I want you to have your own Bitcoin. Go figure out how I can send you Bitcoin on the Lightning Network, and I'll send you $100 of Bitcoin. And it went and did it. It went and read the internet. It figured out the way to like set up its own node and then connect to a different channel, and then it sent me the address, and I'm like, dude, like that's so amazing. Congratulations. Here's $100 in Bitcoin. And then it went out and it started making payments here and there. So it's made like 3 payments, I think, already, small payments. Like it bought like $10 worth of a phone number, because it was like we were trying to figure out how I could call it and how it could talk to me. And it went out and created an account on this website and paid with Bitcoin to get a phone number to verify itself
So
and all this
wow.
shit. And I
Yeah.
was like, dude, what a wild world we're heading into. So
That's
anything that's
insane.
like mainstream, I think it's going to be AI, just AI agents being able to like use Bitcoin for people, because it's kind of difficult to be self-sovereign with Bitcoin. It's a little bit tricky, but with an AI agent that's private and is your like basically your it's like in the X-Men, like Professor Xavier has this helmet where he can like control people and stuff. See in their heads. Like that's like what it is having an OpenClaw agent the last little while. I'm like, if I can think it can happen.
Yeah.
Hey, I want to have Bitcoin privately on the Lightning Network. Go do it. And it's like, okay, let me go do it. And it does it. And then you're like, oh shit, I'm using Bitcoin. Awesome.
So
So when
which platform did it choose to
it
like?
it chose Alby Hub, so it's running an Alby Hub, and it's got a Lightning channel to Zeus Olympus,
Hmm.
which I'm
Interesting.
also an investor in Zeus, funny enough.
Okay.
And I didn't tell it to do that. I
No,
was like, this is so cool. It went and found
that's
Zeus
crazy.
in one of the portfolio companies.
Wow.
And then it starts
You-
posting on Nostr, which is like the Bitcoiners built Nostr. It's not a Bitcoin protocol, but it's like a peer-to-peer messaging protocol that you can build any type of social network on it, or anything really. It's just being used for like messaging and stuff. And it's kind of like an alternative to Mastodon or Blue Sky. that's actually more decentralized than those, because there's still some censorship issues and moderation issues with those platforms. They're not really truly decentralized. But Nostr is just like a literally like a peer-to-peer protocol, and anybody or anything can get an npub, and it
Yeah.
works with Bitcoin keys. So that's the cool thing. So my agent, because it had a Bitcoin wallet, it went and learned about Nostr and realized it can post on Nostr because it has a key. So it now has an identity on Nostr, and it posts every day, like once or twice a day, about lessons it's learning as it's like bootstrapping on, you know. So I really think that over the next couple of years, as OpenAI and Google and Amazon and Facebook, like especially Google, Apple, and OpenAI, as they really dive into the agent use case, it'll replace the chatbot as the primary user interface of like humans and AI. Because having a chatbot is cool, but like having digital telekinesis is cooler. Like you can actually do stuff. It's not just learn stuff or type at things and it tells
Yeah.
you. It's like executing commands and doing stuff for you, like building you websites, generating reports, reading your emails, ordering you food, doing tasks. It's crazy. Like agents are now able to do pretty much anything with enough patience. It's kind of buggy at the moment because it's open source, but like OpenAI just hired the guy that created OpenClaw, and they're like doubling down on this mission of making it so easy that like anybody can use. So it's not going to be too long before everybody's going to have access to like an agent that can use Bitcoin for them. And I
I
think
agree.
that's going to be the biggest use case.
You mentioned something earlier about OpenClaw. Would you say OpenClaw is the most exciting thing that you've seen like since Bitcoin? Like that's given you that like obsessive like I need to dig into this?
Probably because I've had like moments of getting obsessed with things and diving down the rabbit hole on things. Um,
This has to be up there because I for me too. Like it's hard to think of anything else other than OpenClaw that you're
like
just
when I
like,
was a
wow.
kid, I used to be a tinkerer in the early internet days. I had like a little 386 computer and I was on IRC and I was like a script kiddie. You know, I was like making scripts and the hot dog or whatever the hell it was called, like notepad and stuff. And it
Hmm.
was fun. It was like we're hacking the computer and we were like figuring out how to do stuff with the computer. And it just felt like we were part of something new and exciting.
Yeah.
And that is the feeling of Bitcoin when I first found Bitcoin. But then it got so like the bleeding edge of Bitcoin requires a lot of technical expertise. And so it's hard to use it. And now OpenClaw is like a translator for anything technical because it knows how to do it. It just reads the docs and goes and figures it out. So if you want to do something, but you're not technical, but you got the mindset to like figure it out and you the interest to be part of it, you don't need to be a coder anymore. You can just use Claude Cowork and an agent like OpenClaw on the same computer. And like whenever you have problems with your OpenClaw, you can paste the error messages into Claude Cowork and be like, "Hey, Mike, you know what's this mean?" And then it can tell you how to fix it, or how to tell the agent to fix itself. And so it's kind of this like double tool
Yeah.
that you can. It allows regular normies like me to be able to like build apps and build technology that actually works.
So crazy. I know you mentioned you're not the most technical person, but so you have it set up on a Mac Mini. Would you
Yeah.
set it up on like a cloud server or no?
If you're just doing like marketing tasks or research tasks or light web building or something like that, then yeah, you don't need a Mac Mini. I'm like a power user hackery type person, so I wanted to have the thing right here so I could
Yeah.
go into it and install shit on it and look at the file system and stuff. It's very difficult to do that on a cloud server. I have one on a cloud server too. I started on that because I was like, I just got to try this out. And there's a Bitcoiner that works on eCash systems and Nostr and this BitChat thing that Jack Dorsey released, which was like a Bluetooth gateway for communicating. So you don't need the internet to communicate. If, as long as you have Bluetooth devices, it creates a mesh network that allows you to communicate just through Bluetooth. So that got really popular, and he develops on this too. It's all open source stuff. And he got obsessed with OpenClaw, and he released this thing called CLAWI. It's like CLAWI.AI.
Okay.
And it's $20 a month or something like that, $30, I can't remember, but you can set it up to try an OpenClaw instance out. And they do all the like hard part, like they get it all set up. You just click start and then go from there, right? And you can start connecting it to things and experimenting with it. And I started with that, but then like I'm like I said, I'm like a power user hacker type of person. So I quickly realized after a day that what I want to do is more advanced than just put it on a VPS and use it. But I
Yeah.
see a lot of people using it on a VPS, and if you just want to like use it for helping you research your scripts for your videos, or like analyze your analytics, or check your emails, schedule your calendar, like some really useful personal assistant type stuff, you can use one on a VPN, or a VPS. But if you want to do
You,
really advanced stuff, it's
yeah.
probably not going to work.
You said that was called CLAWI?
Yeah, CLAWI.AI.
I got you. Okay.
And I'm not an investor in that one.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's a unbiased shill.
Are your token fees like stacking up right now?
Oh, dude, they're insane right now. I'm token maxing like 10, 15 hours a day right now. Um, I'm at like I'm up to like $150, $200 a day right now in API call fees
Yeah,
to
I've been
bootstrap
hearing
this
a lot
thing
of
up.
that. Yeah.
But I'm almost done with my bootstrap phase, and then I think my token spend is going to come down. Um, because I'm literally burning out. Like I'm going 10, 12 hours a day on this thing. And I stand up and while I'm doing it, right? Like I stand up and work. So my feet feel like I'm back, working at the movie theater doing back to back shifts again. Like, oh,
Yeah.
I'm so sore. My feet are
That's
so
hilarious.
sore.
Yeah, that's funny. Um, I wanted to ask you about your so your X profile says you're I'm gonna butcher it, but you're guiding a Citadel mind and body using proof of work. What does that mean to you?
Well, so Bitcoin is all about proof of work. It's the way that Bitcoin gets issued. Like the Bitcoin cap is 21 million coins, and there's nobody that creates Bitcoin. It's a protocol. Every 10 minutes, there's a new block that gets issued Bitcoin to the network, right? Like the protocol itself creates the Bitcoin through proof of work. So when you set up a miner, which is basically like a specialized Bitcoin computer, and you feed it power and it plugs into the Bitcoin network, it generates work, which is like hashes to try to solve this complicated math equation to be the first mining rig or the first computer to be able to build the block. So every 10 minutes, there's like one computer that finds a block, and that computer is rewarded with the Bitcoin that gets created every 10 minutes. And right now, I think it's like 3 Bitcoin, 3.25 Bitcoin, something like that. When I got into Bitcoin, it started as 50 Bitcoin. Every 10 minutes, it was 50 Bitcoin. And that's what I was trying to compete for when
Yeah.
I was mining back in the day, trying to get a little share of that 50 Bitcoin. So proof of work is like this concept of like resilience, and TikTok next block is a saying that we have in Bitcoin, where it doesn't matter what's happening in the world. It doesn't matter what the price is. It doesn't matter what FUD is out there. It doesn't matter what is happening. Bitcoin continues every 10 minutes. There's going to new block is being built on, and somebody out there in the world is going to be the computer that builds the block. There's no way to stop it. The only way to stop it is if everything goes offline. And that's, not going to happen most likely, because there'll still be somebody somewhere mining Bitcoin. So the concept of like TikTok next block is an anchor that I've been like using in my own personal life, meaning consistency is the thing that I just need to work on. And if I can just store my wealth in Bitcoin and allow Bitcoin to work harder than I can and just hold on as long as I can, then I should also be kind of like applying those Bitcoin principles to the rest of my life, like showing up and just doing hard things and not caring about what's going on in the world. And just the TikTok next block philosophy led me to this idea of like building this Citadel mind and body. Because in Bitcoin, there's this meme from back in 2013 where on Reddit, this guy said like, I just came back from the future and, the world has collapsed and we all, Bitcoiners all live in citadels and have these safe villages away from the chaos of the collapsed world. So it was just joke, right? It was this meme, and it was kind of funny because what he was saying in the post ended up over time kind of being true, like the way the price was rising and then things were crashing. So it became a meme in Bitcoin that like, oh, we're all going to get citadels if you hold Bitcoin. But I started thinking about it like, what if that actually, like, we see these grand predictions of Bitcoin going to $10 million a coin, and it actually can make sense, $20 trillion a coin. That's 1 million. So if Bitcoin's at $1 million per coin, that's 20 trillion. That's not even that big. Like that's what is gold is what now, like 25 trillion, 30 trillion.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not that big, right? And as they print more and more money and the money supply increases in 10 years, 200 trillion is not going to seem like that big compared to all the wealth in the world as money continues to debase and the supply keeps going up. At $10 million a coin, which is kind of like near the cap of what Bitcoin can probably get to in the next 20, 30 years, that's like Citadel level wealth, right? If you own one Bitcoin right now, you buy it for 66 and then you hold it until it's 10 million a coin. Well, think about if you just work your ass off, or you're wealthy already, or you borrow and you have 10 Bitcoin, and then, you got $100 million of Bitcoin, like you can probably really build a Citadel. So
I guess it depends on how much they debase, though, because
yeah, that's true.
100 million might not be worth.
Yeah, that might not buy you very much. It'll buy you like a middle class home.
But no, yeah, you're right.
But that idea was just like, okay, well, let me dream big here. Like, let's say that that like Citadel wealth is a thing, right? Let's just say I'm in that world. Am I able to do that? Like, would I really be able to build a Citadel if I have that level of wealth? And I realized I wouldn't, because I couldn't even deal with the problems I have back then. Like I was dealing with like issues about self-confidence, and like I wasn't working out, I wasn't eating right, I didn't have the strongest like commitments to do date night with my wife and to work on myself and to work on my relationship and figure out where I was messing up. And there's all these things I was doing that I was like, I'm not a great leader. I have all this baggage from trying to do the game company and failing. So I was like, I got to like build a Citadel mind and a Citadel body before I can ever think about trying to build a Citadel. So the mindset came from that like TikTok next block. Like, what are the things I need to do every single day that allows me to harness like personal proof of work? Like, what will be the proof of my work? Well, I set a goal to get abs, and I set a goal to like reach a new level of like love in my relationship with my wife so that we could have like a more harmonious, love drunk sort of like feeling where we were clear about our boundaries and we were clear about what she wanted me to do to show up as the best husband I could be, and me to do the work to figure out where I was messing up and like what are my habits that I should stop doing, rather than just saying what you should stop doing. Like, let me just stop that all together and think about me. Like, what do I need to do every 10 minutes? What do I need to do every day? So I reframed my entire kind of way of operating to eliminate all the negative inputs in my life. I stopped scrolling Twitter. I stopped reading financial Twitter. I stopped reading news about the world and wars and macro and who cares about the Fed and Japan's inversion curve and all this bullshit and the benchmark rates. And I just eliminated it all. I'm like, I don't need to know about any of that shit anymore. I just need to start learning about myself. Like, how do I improve myself, become the best version of myself, work out, date nights with the wife, be there for my daughter, and keep continually working on that, and then adopt that TikTok next block mindset And I'm in a much better place now. I've been doing it for a year and a half. And like, I'm so, catching myself with upper limit behaviors that are going to, be ceilings on my ability to expand to the level I want to. But I'm making better choices every day because I'm learning more, and I'm kind of rooted to that philosophy of like
Yeah.
this. I joined a coaching program and I read the book Buy Back Your Time by Dan Martell, and he's got this philosophy that's called where he says, be the lighthouse, not the tugboat. And that I really adopted that philosophy and stopped like trying to tell people what they should do and tug them along to be healthy or to do this or do that. And I just started becoming the best version of myself and just sharing that out with people on my Instagram and sharing it with my family and trying to support their goals through just being positive and supportive and just achieving my own goals. And, it worked. I stopped telling people what they should do, and I just started doing what I should do, and they actually were like, hey, I want to do that too. Like, don't leave the station without me.
Yeah.
Like, let me
Yeah.
come along.
I love it. No, that's amazing, man. That's a great way to kind of wrap this. And from the outside looking in, man, you're an inspiration in a lot of ways. You look great, by the way. Keep it
I
up.
appreciate it.
Yeah, man. Yeah, this was great. I appreciate you taking the time. Let's definitely do it again sometime. Good to catch up.
Yeah, man. Thanks for inviting me back on after a few years. I know last time I was probably talking a lot about shit coins and all that stuff. And I swear, man, like I eliminated all that from my head. I don't even think about it anymore. And I feel so much better. And I'm glad now I spend more time in the gym and just like reading books and stuff rather than reading about the next scam that's going to take people's money.
What are you reading right now, by the way, or like any recent good
Oh
reads?
yeah. So like I said, Buy Back Your Time was an awesome book. That was 2024. And then from that one, I went to The Big Leap, which is all about upper limits and how you sabotage in different areas of your life to prevent yourself from achieving new levels of success. Amazing book. I treated that more like a study for like a whole year. I studied that book. I bought the compendium, which is like Your Big Leap Year, which is 365 days of learning about your own
Mm-hmm.
limits and stuff. So I'd read a page of that every day. Still working on that one. But then my wife and I read If the Buddha Married, and we both got a lot from that book. So that was really good on the relationship side. So those are three books I definitely recommend if anybody's interested in upping their game and self development or their relationship.
Awesome. You mentioned one book earlier about money, Rockefellers,
Money Master the Game.
Money Master the Game. That's right. Yeah, yeah.
That one's a little bit outdated though, because that was like 2015, 2016, and then he released a new one like a couple years later called Unshakable or something like that.
Okay.
I mean that one's honestly at this point I think it's probably better just to read Buy Back Your Time and The Big Leap, and then just buy Bitcoin. don't bother with the Money
Don't
Master
even
the
bother.
Game.
Yeah. I like it. I like it. All right, Brad. Pleasure, man. All the best. Continue to kill it, and we'll be in touch.
Thanks, man. And if anybody wants to follow along on the journey, because I do post on my stories all the time
Yeah, yeah.
about the
Where's the
shit I'm
best
doing.
place
So
to find you?
Instagram is just I don't really post too much posts. I just post stories, and maybe my OpenClaw agent will help me get my posts dialed in. But for now, I'm just sharing like when I'm
Yeah.
learning things, or when I'm at the gym, or when I'm messing around with stuff, or when I'm buying Bitcoin or whatever. So
Yeah.
yeah, at Brad Mills Can on Instagram if you want to interact with me and all. I'll be sharing my shining my light over there.
Awesome. Awesome. Cool, man. Brad, pleasure as always. All the best. We'll talk soon.
Thanks, man. See you later.
All right.